What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another episode, checking in with everything going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my co-host Dave Martin. Swagger Dave, what's going on, man?
Mr. Right Now, that's me. 21 Savage from the clouds, baby. What a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, we were talking about how it's gonna be a light pod, and in some respects, it's not our heaviest pod in terms of topics to discuss. But
Mhm.
uh, Savage giveth this week, and him and Metro dropping Savage Mode 2. We're gonna be talking about that, as well as a BLACKPINK debut album, a couple of movies. But Dave, should we eulogize movie theaters at this point?
Yeah. Oh
there
my
was a
God.
great there was a great tweet I saw where someone was like, the year is like 2050, and they're like, when I was 30 years old, I was able to go see as many movies as I want for $10 a month. It's like, it's insane to think of where we were with Movie Pass just a mere 2 years ago, and the state of movies right now.
I mean, shit. I'm happy to pay more than the $10 a month for AMC A List,
Mm-hmm.
and I have friends that'll do the same for Rico Unlimited. Problem is that there's no sustained box office, so now there's no new movie releases, and thus no one's going to the movies, and thus movie theaters are closing,
Mm-hmm.
while also hemorrhaging money. It's a terrible mess, and at this rate, I don't think anyone expects any major film to release for the end of the year. There's no reason to believe that. Wonder Woman 1984 and Soul, the Pixar film, are both still dated, as well as Death on the Nile, but those are going to move. There's no doubt about that. And that means that what? You got to wait till like February for something, you know? What happens to those movie theaters in the meantime? We already know that Cineworld is closing all their locations this week, which includes all the Regal cinemas here in the U.S. So it's bleak and honestly really disappointing, because if you don't have movie theaters to make theatrical grosses happen, then you don't get these big blockbusters that people like because you can't justify their costs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's been some lobbyist comments from the theater groups and stuff pointing blame, blah, blah, blah. Notions that studios should release movies even if they won't make a profit, just to keep the viability of the business going. And it's really messy. And I just hope that the whole model of going to the movie theater can survive in some form, But even if the major chains are able to survive when big movies return to the public, a lot of independent chains and smaller theaters will never open again.
Yep.
It's terrible.
I know. I was thinking about a movie theater near me. It's a Greenberg. Oh man, I can't remember what the theater type is, but it's where I go to see all like the artsy films that we talk about on here. Small movie releases for the most part, and I can't imagine that they're going to be able to survive. That they're ever going to be opening their doors after this. It's sad because when you think about it, and we've been talking about this over the last couple of years, how movies are increasingly going in one or two directions, either really small budget artsy films or the really big budget blockbuster films, and the middle class is kind of dying out. And it feels like that divide is going to be made even larger by the fact that the small budget ones most likely will end up being movies that probably go to on demand a lot faster, and the only thing movie theaters will be showing probably when they open back up are just going to be big blockbusters that they know will get people in the door right away. So it just feels like the the division in terms of movies that are made is just going to grow increasingly larger. Perhaps we'll start to see some some more things like Amazon Studios, Apple, Netflix continuing to make these smaller movies or picking up that middle tier. That's always a possibility, but we've also talked about the issue of these streaming services being the ones who are propelling the movies out there, and the theater experience that comes with that. Amazon has been considering, or has been buying movie theaters in order to put their movies out. But I just feel like the further we get away from the way things have been, the more it feels like these changes may not actually benefit moviegoers in the long run. So just it's very sad. And wear a mask, man. Like people that aren't taking COVID seriously at this point, um, things aren't gonna just turn around because you want them to. Like we need a big societal shift in that. Any last thoughts before we move on?
Well, and it's interesting too to see, like, you look elsewhere in the world, the Chinese box office is back to full strength, and there's a lot of locally made movies that have putting up huge numbers. The highest grossing film of the year is now The 800, a Chinese war epic, and elsewhere, like in Europe, that society over there is ready to get new movies, but those theaters are now also going to take the hit because of what's happened in North America, and thus is leading all the Western releases to get delayed, so it's a big mess. And
big mess.
It's I just hope it can survive in some fashion, because, like, as you were saying, like, if you're someone who likes to go to the movies a lot, that might become a tougher prospect and a more expensive one, and that's unfortunate, because it seemed like the tide was going the other direction in that not too long ago, but now if you have to pay for a lot more rentals, it's going to add up a lot faster, I think, than buying a few tickets or having a theater subscription. So we'll see.
Streaming wars might become a lot more interesting moving forward. So we'll see, and we'll be talking about it. So stay subscribed. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe, or SoundCloud.com to follow the podcast any way you want to. Dave, behind you is YG. Watch out. Dropped his most recent album, My Life for Hunnid. A follow-up to a pretty underwhelming album just a year ago, For Real. I mean, and Stay Dangerous, I think we also were even more underwhelmed by. I think For Real was, I felt like it was maybe a step in the right direction in a sense. After Still Brazy, I think YG felt like someone that you wanted to be investing in. Stock was going up, getting it on the ground floor type thing. I still bump Fuck Donald Trump all the time. Banger of a song. But Dave, where are you at with this now? Are you selling all your YG stock after My Life for Hunnid?
No, not selling. I mean, this is album 5 for YG. It just kind of feels like a random 5th album to me. Like, it's doesn't have as many hits as My Crazy Life. It's not as impressive and introducing new genres the way Still Brazy did, but it's not nearly as generic and uninspired as Stay Dangerous, and it's probably kind of on par, maybe a little step below For Real. So it's like kind of just like another entry for YG, and like, I think that's okay. Like, I think that it's still pretty solid, but yeah, I mean, the highs of Still Brazy, they do feel more and more out of reach the more we get. I mean, YG is still only like 30 years old. He's just a pretty active member of the LA rap scene. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon at all. But yeah, when you drop a Cali G Funk record in 2017, you just raise the expectations, I think, and he doesn't seem to be interested in that all that much. And I think the new song on this, FTP, Fuck the Police, doesn't hit nearly the same as FDT does and still does. So other than that, he doesn't seem to have as much interest in the more, socio-political songs that he did, like he did on Still Brazy. So I guess it depends what you're asking for from him. I think there's still some good joints on here.
Yeah, I think that is probably the right question, is what are we asking of YG? And I guess when you're thinking about where we thought he was going and where he's kind of gone, like, the word that comes to mind is just kind of like mid at this point. And not that not that him as an artist is necessarily like not a good artist, but I think from where the ceiling seemed to be to where he is now, I think he's, very comfortably in that mid tier. But there's nothing on this album that made me feel more optimistic, about especially after For Real. This felt, like you said, I think a lot more in line. And honestly, the middle of the album I found pretty just like uninspired and not really like interesting to be completely honest. I think there's a couple of songs that maybe stick out a bit, but for me, I thought actually Blood Walk, the second song with Wayne, was at least caught my ear, a change up in terms of we were doing, I had that like flute like part that was kind of riding through the beat, which is pretty nice. Rodeo, I thought was pretty good, although I gotta say, like, the beat was good. I don't know if I really like Tyga and Chris Brown on the song, but I enjoyed the beat on that. And then
it's a really good beat.
FTP, I gotta be honest, like all I kept thinking was this song has been done a lot better by a lot better artists in the past.
Yeah, that came out pretty soon after George Floyd happened, and like salute for trying to put something out real quick and all, but yeah, not pretty boilerplate as far as that kind of stuff goes, unfortunately. Which again, disappointing because FDT is a really great track. Yep. I really like Jealous, the first song. I liked Out on Bail. Those kind of remind me of like classic YG flows, YG bounce, But Rodeo, Chris Brown, Tyga, they have a lot of chemistry together. They've made a lot of music together. That kind of feels like a Chris Brown, Tyga song to me more than it does a YG song with Chris Brown, Tyga. Sure. I thought Lil TJ was actually used the way he should be used on Hate on Me. It was unexpected. But ultimately, I thought the features on this were just a little strange. Like, I did not need Lil Mosey on Thug Cry. I actually thought Cowboy, someone I don't really like, was pretty good on that, but Lil Mosey just should not have been there. And Gunna, like, I don't need YG making songs with Gunna. I'm sorry. So, like, it just, like, I wasn't impressed, but I think there's still a moment or two, and that's okay, I guess. But yeah, I mean, YG just seems pretty complacent with where he's at right now. So yeah, that's what we're getting. And
complacent is a good word.
He picked a bad weekend to drop this because search engine optimization, the CEO, is crushing him right now. Because if you search YG on social, you search YG anywhere else, you're getting YG Entertainment because of the BLACKPINK album. So it's like he's just getting buried. It's not good.
Yeah. I was in New York City the other day, and I saw so many people walking around with like BLACKPINK outfits or like dressed like them. And we're going to talk about them in a second, but I did not see many people dressed like YG. So I agree.
We're on the wrong coast for that.
Yeah. Well, that's also true. So although it would be interesting to see what the ratio was for that. But why don't we move on to someone else who, I don't know, I guess we haven't really talked about them that much. Bryson Tiller dropping Anniversary this past weekend. Have we even talked about Bryson on the pod?
2017, his sophomore album, True to Self, came out in the summer, and it was a major letdown for all involved. And if you talk to Bryson now, he's like, yeah, I was burnt out. I didn't care about that album. And boy, did it show. That was one of the most disappointing sophomore efforts I can remember, to be honest. And that was because that debut album, Trap Soul, from 2015 was so great and had so many highs. So yeah, it's been a minute.
I was going to say, I couldn't even remember if we had talked about him, but yeah, so it's been a couple of years. And Anniversary, going into it, I think I'll say my expectations were kind of just not even there. I was like, we'll see what comes out of this. I was aware that that debut album was pretty fire. Obviously didn't really remember much about the second album. And I felt like this was pretty good. Like, I'm not going to stand here and tell you this was album of the year, but I think the sound on this and just the overall energy coming from Bryson is a step in the right direction. And I'm pleased with that. How are you feeling after it?
He's back, baby.
Ooh,
he's done it.
Dave loved it.
So exciting, dude. So exciting. When Trap Soul came out, I think what was so exciting about Bryson is he was very much a disciple of the House of Drake. You have this pure hit-making ability combined with R&B and a hip-hop cadence. He's definitely more R&B, whereas Drake is obviously more rap. But like, you could see the clear comparison. And he doesn't sign to OVO Records, despite being the offer, kind of following in the Weeknd footsteps to do his own thing and not go into the shadow. But then you get that True to Self album, which is basically just R&B, but it's like that really sleepy, nondescript R&B that no one really likes. And I never thought he was a flash in the pan, but like, then as he became more reclusive and spent time with his daughter, and it just seemed like maybe he was just going to fade away. But you get a feature once in a while, right? You get the Wild Thoughts feature. Everyone remembers Rihanna on that, but Bryson was also really good on that too. Of course, the DJ Khaled song. And I just have been waiting for something, right? And we got like there's a loose single here or there, Summer Walker feature. Like he'd pop up in and around, but it's like, when is Bryson gonna like get back to like being himself? And I think on Anniversary, you get a lot of the things that people like about Bryson Tiller. On Things Change, that sounds just like trap soul. That's classic trap soul sound. Timeless Interlude, you get more of that hip hop cadence, right? He finally got a Drake feature on At a Time, and that's just a pure R&B song. And had hearing him and Drake actually harmonize a little bit. I think that's not R&B Drake. It's not my favorite Drake, but I think that's really good R&B Drake on that. Inhale, which was one of the first singles. That SWV sample is freaking fire, dude. And the way it's like chopped up and slowed down later in the track.
Yeah.
Like, there's just a lot of moments on this, which is great because it's only a 30-minute project. And ultimately, all I wanted was this to be like a something that would demonstrate confidence that Bryson Tiller is back and in the right space. And clearly he is. And that's awesome.
So with someone like Bryson, right, it feels like, I mean, he should be doing what Chris Brown was doing for YG, right? Coming in, singing these hooks, really like do this. Do you think that that's kind of the move for him, or do you want him to be making albums like in this way? Because it seems like, especially because he took this couple-year break, like you said, he was spending more time with his daughter. Maybe that's where he found a little bit more of this inspiration that kind of got him back to form. It feels like we should be hearing him doing these hooks and these like short features, but taking time in between albums to really like find that focus. Is that kind of what you want to see from him moving forward?
Yeah. I mean, generally, I feel like he makes good impressions on his features. Like I mentioned, that Summer Walker one. People really like that song. A few years back now at this point on Travis's Birds in the Trap, he's awesome on First Take. Why can't he be like Ty Dolla $ign?
Yeah.
Why don't we give some of the black features to Bryson? I think they would be better, But like I think he has like sneaky versatility though, because he actually can do like more hip hop stuff,
right?
And it sounds good, it doesn't seem corny or contrived. So like I think Black, not to keep harping on him, but like Black, he's in Village, but like you ain't rapping, dog,
Yeah. No, and you picked out a couple of the songs I thought really stood out. I'm Ready For You is probably my favorite track. I really liked
awesome too.
Yeah, I loved how his vocals were kind of like that like distant distorted sound, and then it had like the beat popping in and out over it just really came together well. I don't think that this is gonna be his best work. I think still the debut is probably the best album he's put out, but definitely a step in the right direction. So good to see from Bryson. Any other thoughts on him or this album in general?
I like the album cover because it's like a juxtaposition of the Trap Soul cover. It looks cool. Of course, he's still rocking the black hat because he's literally never been seen without said hat, and that continues to this day. So a lot of like that consistency. He did tweet, I think it was, that more's coming soon. So hopefully that's good. Hopefully he becomes a more active member of the R&B and hip hop scene. That would be a welcome presence. But if he wants to go away, I guess that's cool too. At least he's, I think, got people back in a certain sense, and that was kind of like that's what this album was about. Like if he didn't get people back on this, and this was another flop, I think it was kind of over for him trying to reach those highs, because people would just be checked out, because we're 5 years away from Trap Soul at this point. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
He did what he had to do on this.
Good to see. Someone else that did what they had to do this weekend. 21. Man, dropping kind of from nowhere. Savage Mode 2. We obviously talked about 21 back in 2018. I Am Greater Than I Was. I think it almost made both of our top 10 lists, honorable mention at least. especially for an album that came out at the very beginning of
Yeah.
that year.
Well, no, that's the thing. It came out at the end of 2018,
End of
so our
2018,
lists
right?
were done.
Right.
It came out like a few days before Christmas.
Yeah.
So you don't make any lists when you do that. But a
We at
great
least
album, and like
yeah.
it demonstrated like that continued growth and again the unexpected reality that was 21 Savage kind of evolving into this really impressive top of the game Atlanta rapper, which is not what people expected when they heard Red Ops in 2016.
Right.
Like it's been a long journey, and it's also been a long 2 years for 21, of course, after everything happened with those fucks at ICE, you know, and his citizenship coming into question, stuff like that.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that happened, but what an insane story. Yeah, but anyway, so end of 2018, we get I Am Greater Than I Was, a couple of years and things going on. Savage Mode 2 drops, follow up from 2016 Savage Mode. Metro Boomin on the ones and twos. Dave, how are you feeling about this album?
This is one of the best rap albums of the year.
Yeah,
easily.
It really is.
Easily. This shit is freaking flames. And was
no
the talk
skips?
of the town all weekend. It's fucking fire, dude. It's fucking fire.
I think that's the thing about this is if you're dropping a surprise album, you know, it's really got to hit, or it's just kind of like, okay, why did you make this a surprise album? So he must have known that this was fire. And yeah, I'm pretty much on the boat where I don't think there's a skip on this. Like, I think
everything's
all the features,
at least good.
Yes,
and that's amazing. I'm so happy.
I know, and that it's either good to like very, very good, great range. And I ran out of room. I leave myself like a certain amount of room on my notes to like write, and I like ran out of room for the songs that I liked on this album. So we have a lot to start with, but I think the thing that stood out most for me is this is a very cohesive sound. I think there's a couple of tracks that are a little more upbeat, but mostly it's like that icy kind of like horror, scary movie type feel to this. So it's very much of the time of year as well. You got Morgan Freeman narrating these skits throughout, which is just such a flex. I mean, when I heard Morgan Freeman kicking this thing off, I listened to this going for a run, which is probably the best run I've had in a very long time. And yeah, I was just like, Morgan Freeman's on this? Like, what? Kind of crazy. You know, I don't know. Like, where do you want to start? There's a lot to break down here.
You know, you mentioned the production and sounding like the spooky production, which makes a lot of sense because it sounds kind of like Without Warning did, which was the 21 Savage and Offset album, of course. That was also produced entirely by Metro Boomin. So you kind of can see that through here. But I think Metro, he's done a lot of collab albums. Not all of them have hit. You know, let's not forget he did one album with Nav. He did one with Big Sean. You don't need to listen to those. Those weren't any good. But on this one, I think, God, Metro's like kind of showing off. Like on Glock in My Lap, there's like really impressive strings. On Stepping on Dudes, you got this West Coast vibe, and he's on his Dr. Dre shit with the keys, you know. He's always kind of like a flashy producer. That's kind of his style. But I think he really acquitted himself well on this. Even like Said and Done, the last track, there's kind of like this like twinkle to the beat, especially in the beginning, and then you have like hardcore like, you know, trap beat under that too. Like he was great on this. And you know, producers can be amazing, 10 out of 10. But if you don't have the lyrics or the vocal performances, it's only going to go so far. But thankfully, 21 was more than capable because he also just completely showed out on this. And as you said, you also get out of nowhere Morgan Freeman in a major way on this. It's not like just the intro or just an interlude. It's multiple bits of narration and setting up songs. Quite unexpected.
Yeah, you know, I'm reading through my notes here, and like almost every song I wrote down, I was like, this beat's fucking crazy. But Many Men might have been my favorite one. It had that really fast like drum kit to it, but with like this do 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 behind it, and it just like came together so well. And 21 just like glides over that track. I thought that was a really impressive overall, like song overall. You mentioned Glock in My Lap. That's probably one of the standouts for me. That song is just absolute flames.
Just fire.
Yeah. And that feels like a very 21 song, like something he might have even made before without the production at that level. Stepping On is the song that I really loved a lot. I thought that was a great track. What do you think about the features on this, though? We get Drake again. Second time we're talking about him this week. Young Thug, Young Nudie, great name.
I think him and Young Nudie are related. I forget. I think they're cousins. But yeah, that is about as perfect a Drake feature as there is.
Yep.
And Mr. Right Now, which is quickly becoming the biggest song on this album after one weekend. You get 21 completely showing out on the track, right? And then Drake coming in and does all the things you want Drake to do with a rap feature. He's mimicking the flow of the lead performer. He's dropping some kind of viral reference or moment about, I used to date SZA back in 2008, which SZA recently clarified was actually 2009 for, I guess, legal reasons. Who knows? But you get all this stuff. And at the end, as he fades out, when they go back into the hook, him and 21 harmonize. And it sounds amazing. They harmonize longer on this than Ariana and Lady Gaga did on Rain on Me. Like, it's insane. That shit's amazing. That's probably one of my favorite songs of the year already. Yeah, like I said, that's exactly what you want from a Drake rap feature.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought, and I actually really liked the Young Thug feature too on the next track. Mr. Right Now, I think, is probably the one that's going to make our playlist, Nowstalgia Best of 2020. Check that out. But yeah, there's not a bad track on this, like you said. I think there's only tracks that are good and tracks that are better. What other tracks stood out to you, or which ones you want to talk about?
Yeah, I like Sliding a lot. I think that was a great example of the underrated ability of 21's hooks. He's like, sliding, looking for my ops, they've been hiding. It's like he again, like the guy who used to be like murder gang shit. Like, he's just come so far. Really likes the performance on that. Running, the first track, that's got a video already. That one, that's just kind of a catchy banger. I like that one. But Brand New Draco is also flames. Yeah. I mean, I think, to me, it was up to me, I'd say 21's the best rapper in Atlanta.
Wow.
I mean, he's not as popular as Future, but I think he's kind of the best right now. He's doing everything. It's awesome.
Yeah, in talking about that, like, stock up, stock down perspective, I mean, he's a surprise. He's like buying Starbucks back in like 98, dude. Like, at this point, like, it feels like he actually has raised the roof of his potential a lot over these last couple of albums. And I mean, working with Metro, I think, can do that for a lot of people, but he's flexing at this point. I think the sky could be the limit for him.
Yeah. I think the actual king of Atlanta right now, like in terms of like objective like statistics and stuff, will be Lil Baby, who has the best selling album of the year right now.
It's crazy,
which is nuts. We'll see if he holds Taylor Swift in that regard. But yeah, I think 21 just continues to just hit a high bar, and that's awesome. And for some like an unexpected drop, as you said, to deliver it at such a high level as well is awesome and rare in hip hop. So great stuff.
Well, Dave, you mentioned before YG had a bad weekend for SEO, and that's because BLACKPINK dropped their debut album, The Album, which is a great album name. And
speaking of SEO,
yeah, and I gotta say, BLACKPINK, we talked a lot about BTS on this. We talked about BLACKPINK a decent amount. They feel like they have potential to dethrone them eventually, BTS. I mean, we talked about how they've broken records on YouTube when they've dropped videos, things
Oh, yeah.
like that. And it feels like it's between them and BTS now, just to like break YouTube video records for the next, I don't know, however many years.
It literally just happened.
Yeah,
They set
it's
the
insane.
record. They set the record again with "How You Like That" back in June, August, whenever that was, which is the lead single for this debut album. Back in August. No, sorry, back in June. 86.3 million views first 24 hours, and then BTS re-broke the record again in August with Dynamite. So you have to imagine they'll continue to trade back and forth because they've both set that record multiple times at this point. It's just really cool to see. But even apart from BTS, like BLACKPINK is the most subscribed to group on YouTube. I think they're like the second or third most subscribed to musical artist period on the platform, and obviously the biggest female group in the world. And if you think about female groups, they're the biggest since who? Like we talked about BTS, it was like, you know, since like One Direction. Like there's more male groups, but like female groups on an international stage, it's like Destiny's Child and Spice Girls. Like it's been a
Yeah,
fucking long time that
yeah.
someone's been at this level for even this short amount of time, because Blackpink has only really been putting out music for a few years. Coming into this album, they only had 15 official songs,
Dave, I feel like
and
you're
all
really
15 are hits. Like
I feel like you're really forgetting Boy Genius in this discussion. No, but your point is well taken. I think that they are a unicorn in a sense that groups like them that have this star power and are all female and this music hit making ability come around maybe like once in a decade, and you can really hear on the album why they're so popular because you know you get two huge features on this, but even the songs without the features I think are really really strong. I don't know if I loved all of these, but they make music in a very distinct way. Their song structure feels so unique to me for some reason. Like they have these like weird change ups, like pre-chorus build-ups that just like really bring you in, and then they have these super catchy choruses. There's each song sounds like it's like influenced by different things. It's just really really interesting to listen to this. How did you feel listening to the album?
Yeah, you know, to that point, I feel like you can kind of hear the dance breaks and choreography moments that will accompany the songs. And K-pop in general is very much a visual medium, a visual genre. Intense choreography, whether it's in a music video or a live set, is a huge part of the music. And you can kind of like hear, if you listen to this album, you can kind of hear it's like, oh, this is the moment where X will happen, and all the fans will take the video here, and then I'll see those videos under chart data tweets for the next year, like the fan cams, right? Like you can kind of just like see like the construction of it. But yeah, I feel like just about all their songs, especially like the banger ones, like How You Like That, like those songs are just engineered to be nonstop all the time, even as they progress from verse to chorus to hook, you know, to whatever, right?
Yep.
And on the other hand, like if you listen to actual sounds of this, right, like you have a lot of like big maximalist EDM drops, which is not new in K-pop at all, but like it almost feels like throwback to me, right? Like I think it's cool to compare them to BTS because BTS is doing very different things musically, especially when you listen to Dynamite, their newest hit, which is kind of a throwback, almost disco song, right? But Blackpink is very much dedicated to that like big pop from like 5+ years ago. That used to be the only thing you really got at K-pop. So it's interesting to see. One thing that immediately stood out to me was this album is only 8 tracks. And because Blackpink had only released EPs and singles to this point, I wonder if that's a disappointment to the Blinks, because Blackpink's MO has almost been just kind of like teasing the streets versus feeding the streets, you know?
Yep. But I almost feel like that works in favor of two things. One, we praise short albums, but people are going to, I think, just want more. And I think anytime you leave people wanting more, wanting to hear more tracks, is never a bad thing, especially with a group like this who already has such a rabid fan base. Like,
Right.
you keep them on the line if you can. BTS puts out a ton of stuff, and I'm always impressed by like their albums, how much work they're putting into it. I mean, they must also be taking language classes on the side with all of this. It's insane the amount of work that these people do to hold down these two markets so well, and I guess like just an international market in general at this point. But the thing is that they really back it up with the music on this. Like you were saying, it does have a throwback feel with the EDM drops, but I was really feeling it on a lot of them. How you like that? You know, you mentioned that's obviously like one of the banger tracks, but a song like Pretty Savage, I
Yeah,
thought
that's dope.
was really really strong. Um, Bet You Wanna with Cardi. I mean, Cardi just like was like, I'm just gonna get the bag real quick and like be on this for like 20 seconds. I feel like, but that had a different feel than a lot of the songs on the album, and I thought it worked okay.
Yeah, it did. Cardi was tweeting about how she didn't like that she had to be PG, and like you you kind of like can understand why, like culturally, like the very explicit lyrics and frankness of Cardi B is just not doesn't really exist in most
Yeah,
Asian music, right? But hearing Cardi kind of like hold back, it did kind of feel weird to me. Like she was like trying her hardest to rein herself in, and it was weird to me because you listen to Ice Cream with Selena
mm-hmm.
Gomez, which is just littered with sexual innuendo,
Yep.
even if it's still technically like all PG, you know. And it's like, I mean, you could have had Cardi do this too. Like,
Yeah,
it's just
you
kind
should
of
have put
strange.
you should have switched tracks, I think, with Selena. But I thought Selena's like verse, or I guess guest spot, was
Yeah,
pretty strong too.
I definitely like that collab more than Sour Candy from Lady Gaga's album.
Yeah, for sure. Um, you know, and then on the second half of the album, I really thought "Crazy Over You" had that like Middle Eastern vibe to it.
That has the
Had a
best
really,
rapping on the album too.
yeah, for sure. Those were, and "Love to Hate Me" too. I thought was a really strong track. So I don't know if there's anything on here I didn't like, but there are definitely a few songs that stood out for me, and it just feels like sky's the limit for Blackpink. Like
Mm-hmm.
you saw the crowd at Coachella that was waiting for them, and
Yeah,
the spectacle of that is, it's obvious that they're going to be around for as long as they want to be, pretty much.
right. Absolutely. Lovesick Girls, that chorus, that really, really
Mm-hmm.
like shouty chorus, something again, you can just see that
Yep.
how that goes in a live setting. Like you just know, you know what that's about. Um, yeah, like thinking of the production, like it's almost like lots of trap and synths, right? Like I think
Mm-hmm.
like Super M, the K-pop supergroup that just dropped last week, which we didn't talk about, that's like lots of like Euro dance EDM, which is more
Mm-hmm.
traditional K-pop. But it seems like for whatever reason, Blackpink is really focused on that maximalist drops from a few years back. So no one else is really doing that. So by all means, do it. You know, it's all
Yeah.
good. Also, I want to say there's a nice profile about Blackpink in Elle, which was a lovely read,
Hmm.
eye opening, and just kind of peek behind the curtain of how busy and how hard these four women work. Because when you're a member of a K-pop outfit in general, it comes with a lot of work. But I feel like when you're this freaking famous, it's insane. And you know, not to talk about BTS, I know the fans don't always get along, but BTS, they're like, oh, we can't tour this summer. Let's make another fucking album this year because we have nothing else to do. Like, those guys work so freaking hard too.
Yeah. Dave, I'm just glad that your Elle magazine subscription finally paid off. So,
Yeah, man.
uh,
We've been getting on the ground floor, man. We out here.
any last thoughts on Blackpink?
They're in your area, man. They're here.
I'm in your area. Okay, we're moving on then to the Glorias, directed by Julia Taymor. A got her chops in directing on stage, actually, which we'll talk about another director that got his break in stage directing as well in the next segment. But the Glorias, starring Julianne Moore and Alicia Vikander. Um, you know, we've talked about Gloria Steinem more this year than we ever have on the pod, obviously. But
Yes.
talking about Mrs. America, we were very tuned into her story as she was a major factor in that show, played by Rose Byrne. Here, portraying Gloria Steinem at different points of her life, whether that be childhood, teenagehood, or I guess like maybe like pre-teenagehood, adulthood, or young adulthood,
Yeah.
and then older adulthood. You kind of get the idea of Gloria's life story. Um, Interesting internal narrative framing device of having all the Glorias on a bus riding somewhere and kind of using travel as a theme throughout the movie to drive the plot along. Um, I found this movie to be informative and interesting, a little long and boring at points, though. How were you feeling after you finished the Glorias?
Yeah, I mean, Gloria Steinem is obviously someone deserving of the biopic treatment,
For
but
sure.
the Glorias just kind of has that traditional biopic feel. Like it does there's a lot of beats that
Mm-hmm.
come up that you kind of see coming. And again, like as you said, the educational value is great because that's something that was a big part of why Miss America was so valuable. And I think when we watch
Uh-huh.
Miss America, we're like, wow, it'd be great to have more time with all these people. You know, Miss America was so much of a piece, and uh, so many people coming in and out as they kind of intersected with Phyllis Schlafly primarily,
Right.
right? And having this one focus on just Gloria Steinem, of course, like, oh well, that should be good. And you know, Bella Abzug is here as well,
Mm-hmm.
and some other people that were in the show, like the what's her name, the who Janelle Monáe plays too,
Yeah, I'm
the
forgetting her
co-founder of
name.
Miss Magazine. But because there's a lot of like fat on the movie because it's 2.5 hours long and it's doing the whole life story, like don't know if we needed all the stuff with her as a kid. You know, like it's just kind of a lot of familiar beats, and you know, going in knowing this was a Sundance film from this year, back when film festivals still were uh, at physical locations. Um,
Yep.
you know, and that inherently like tells you, oh, there's a lot riding on this, and this was, you know, well reported on movie as the Gloria Steinem biopic. But um, I guess what I liked about it most was that it did take it like through more present times versus Miss America, which is very much focused on like a 10-15 year period primarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from the educational value, there's obviously stuff to get, but movie making it's kind of standard, and I wish the screenplay was a little tighter.
Yeah, I think the parts I was way more engaged were the Julianne Moore parts, and I found myself with the Vikander parts kind of tuning in and out. I thought it was interesting to see her development. As this like um, Playboy bunny trying to break into like real magazine writing and journalism. And that part I found interesting, but some of the stuff like with her dad, played by Timothy Hutton, and like her family, I feel like for some reason that just did not strike a chord with me or hit with me for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe because I had already kind of um, gotten the sense of where that was going and felt like that could have been, like you said, played down a bit. The childhood stuff, I feel like there was just way too many examples, although I kind of understood why a lot of them were included. I think the hard part about a biopic in this sense is uh, Gloria had some interesting circumstances that certainly shaped her worldview, and there's a lot of pieces to that. But because there were so many things that impacted her worldview, whether it be her family or her traveling or her parents' relationship or growing up in poverty, um, there's so much to show to kind of give that perspective. It almost feels a bit like it made the movie too long to actually feel focused in some parts. So
Yeah.
I was actually kind of disappointed because I can't really remember the last time I saw Vikander in a role I was like super jazzed about for her.
Yeah, her stock is down. She just hasn't been in amazing movies in a while. It's unfortunate.
And
It's
Tomb
not even like
Raider.
she hasn't been working. I'm not going to blame her for being in Tomb Raider because she's been in other movies.
Get that bag.
But like,
yeah.
Like Earthquake Bird was just kind of all right.
Yeah.
It's like she just kind of hasn't been in anything too exciting in a while. And we know how talented she is, of course, but definitely looking for her to get back to something a little better. And again, on the surface, this could have been it, but it just didn't come together. Playing young Gloria Steinem, that should be a good role, but didn't work.
Any last thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Still happy to see it because I'll watch just about anything these days because there's nothing else new.
Yeah, it's free on Amazon Prime, so if you have Prime, check that out. And most people have Netflix at this point, so you can also check out Boys in the Band, directed by Joe Mantello. Also got earned his chops in stage acting, like things like Wicked, I believe, was one of his first shows.
Just saw him in Hollywood this year. He's also primarily an actor, really.
And Boys in the Band was a play back from the 1960s, I believe 1968, went off Broadway and was revived by the cast you see in the film on Netflix back in 2018. If I recall, that won a ton of Tonys and received a lot of acclaim.
Yeah, won Best Revival that year, yes.
And I mean, the cast on this is just stacked. You have Jim Parsons. I'm blanking on all the names. Of course,
Zachary Quinto.
Yes, thank
Andrew
you.
Reynolds.
Yep. So
Matt
you have a ton of very talented and experienced actors here, telling this story about being a gay man in America back in the 1960s, 1970s. Time is a little bit, not specifically said, but I found this to be a really intense and moving watch, but not something that totally made me feel like, wow, and I'm not quite sure exactly why. I think I'm still kind of working it out in my head. This has I believe an 80% Rotten Tomatoes, so 4/5 of people say that this is a really, really good movie, and especially I think an adaptation of a play to a movie. Where do you stand with it?
Yeah, I think it starts off really strong too, because I was immediately taken with the theatrical nature of the film adaptation. It's very much staged like a play.
Yeah.
It's basically just set in this one apartment, a very impressive apartment, might I add. One thing that briefly took me out of it when I was told that Jim Parsons' character doesn't pay any of his bills, yet somehow lives in a great apartment with a balcony and a second story, like a duplex thing. I was like, wow, that's definitely a product of the 60s. Cool. Yep. But as you watch it, and you see the dialogue, it's pretty consistent, right? Because it's a movie, because it's a play, just about people talking in rooms. That's all it is. And it'll live and die based on the strength of that acting and the strength of that script. And like you said, as you said, this is the reunion of the cast from the revival, just like the movie from 1970 was the reunion of the cast from the play in 68. And it was interesting to me seeing this for the first time, and I had never seen any other versions of it, seeing this after something like Call Me By Your Name, because of how different they are, right? Obviously, both versions of the play and movie are featuring all out gay men in the cast. And yet, this is a criticism of the play at the time, and yet you're getting a lot of the woe is me, self-loathing nature to the gay story and gay experience, right, in America. And that's something that has almost reinforced stereotypes in the past. So I can understand where that criticism came from. But from what I understand, the play and everything kind of had a critical reawakening when it's kind of realized that this was more about this was by gay people for gay people first, and it's inherently that audience is going to get more out of it than other people. But I still really liked it, And I think that was because I think, the performance is really committed. You have to imagine that this is when you've done this play so many times, you can kind of just make this movie in your sleep. For
Yep.
this cast, I have to imagine it was pretty easy. And I thought it really looked awesome. And just kind of thinking about it, right? Because this is taking place in '68. This is like on the cusp of the gay liberation movement, right? So like it makes sense that all these men are struggling with their identity in some way because that's what it was like back then,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it gives you a lot to chew on just because it kind of throws a lot at you pretty quickly. And I like most of the performances. Jim Parsons carries most of the movie, and he inherently does a lot of Jim Parsons things, including becoming a very grating presence as his character gets drunker and more antagonistic and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, Parsons' character in a lot of ways, especially as he got drunker, reminded me of his character from Hollywood in a sense, And I think that was a little bit distracting for me because I was like, oh, this feels like I just was watching you do this on Netflix a little while ago. But I think probably the most interesting scene, and I think the scene people go back to is the phone call scene, right? I guess technically just the whole third act is this dare that Jim Parsons is this game, but also really a dare that Jim Parsons is making everybody in the room play to call their past loves and kind of kick up these like emotional scars and wounds for themselves. And it brings to the surface, I think, a lot of the issues that people who are struggling with that gender identity or that sexual identity uh, maybe go through at times. I mean, not obviously not all people go through that, but I think it was interesting seeing Andrew Rannell's character talk through with his boyfriend, how he doesn't believe in monogamy and he doesn't
Yeah.
really want to stay committed and things like that. I thought that was a really interesting issue to flesh out. I really liked when Harold, Quinto, kind of confronted Jim Parsons about his own self-hatred and how he's projecting that onto everybody by making them play this game in this way. That was a really strong moment that kind of like took my breath away in a sense watching this. So there's like some really awesome moments. I think it's also just heavy in a lot of ways because these are people who are all struggling in different senses for different things, and kind of just leaves you feeling a bit broken at the end. It's tough at points. What were some scenes or moments that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, to that point, what you were saying, everybody in the cast for the most part is kind of bringing something to the table in terms of what their character is, right? Like how they touch on like Emery's presence as someone who's very flamboyant and effeminate and out, right? And then you contrast that with someone like Bernard, who also has to be a black gay man on top of just being a gay man, right? And I mean, what was Harold, right? Like Harold's dealing with aging and becoming less, his self-worth declining as a result, right? And then you have the cowboy dude just getting racked on for being handsome yet unintelligent. It's like,
a bit dim.
Like, wow, it's like it's quite the party, I guess, right? I guess one thing that I felt was predictable was what's his name, Alan. Alan obviously
calling his wife
something going on.
Was
pretty obvious, right? Like it's not explicitly said, right? And I believe that's the way the play stages it too, is that there's an ambiguity to that, and the ending of the thing in general is kind of ambiguous. But yeah, there's kind of a lot to chew on with this, and I just kind of like watching everyone vamp and kind of go back and forth. And again, it's a lovely apartment to spend time in.
That is the really nice thing about adapting a play to screen is those moments that you would get for each character on a theater stage are a little bit more emphasized and highlighted here. Like being so close to Jim Parsons as his character is just berating these people to make these phone calls, or like the close up on the Michael Benjamin, who played Bernard, and as he was kind of like realizing what he had done and like the emotional wounds he had opened, it just was like really, I think, hits you in a way that you don't get watching it. It's like a longer or like a further back shot, like you were sitting in the crowd or something like that. So I think this is impressive in a lot of ways, and there's some really great stuff here. I just think it's maybe not a movie I'll find myself going back to too much, but great performances, like you said. Any last thoughts? You good?
Yeah, no, I mean, this was a Ryan Murphy production.
He's working.
He helped get this stage play to the screen.
And we can't wait for Monster. Always something with that guy.
Netflix is keeping him busy. But this is actually a good use of his talents, I'd say.
I agree.
He's the most prolific gay producer there is right now, I'm pretty sure. So it kind of makes sense that they would make sure he gave everything he could to this. And Joe Mantello, he was also in the Normal Heart. He's been pretty active lately, and I liked him a lot in Hollywood. So that Murphy synergy coming back. So yeah, didn't really know what to expect going in, and I was pleasantly surprised by the boys in the band.
I agree. Dave, what we got for next week?
Yeah, so next week we'll talk about the conclusion of The Boys season 2. Very exciting.
Hell yeah.
Then we got some new music. We got Your Guys, Future Islands, one of your favorite bands ever. Reason, a very intriguing rapper on TDE. And then the debut album from Heady One, something we've already discussed this year. So, and I'm sure we'll have more to come as well. So
man,
stay tuned.
I'm praying for another surprise drop. Not gonna lie. That way we can take Future Islands off. But anyways, we'll be talking about it all next week. Subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod, @nostalgiapod on Twitter, and follow Dave @MartinSwagger. We'll see you next week. Peace out.